Hey, what's up? This is Brad with Be Real. Man, I love the new year. Every year, I love the new year, and part of it is kind of the turning of the page, and last year's behind you, and you kind of go into this new year with a clean slate, and you can make it pretty much anything you want it to be. And what I want to talk about today a little bit is encouraging and a growth mindset. And you can set all kinds of goals. We're going to talk about goals a little bit. Don't stop watching just because I said goals. For a lot of people, it just immediately turns people off. Trust me, when I get done, it won't be as intimidating to you. But I want to talk about like a growth mindset, and I want to talk about goals and what is it you want to achieve and for the year, and why that is so important to set goals. One of the big things that when I was getting ready for this podcast was, and I'll be honest with you too, this is another one of those deals that I've not been great at, but I feel like because of everything that went on in 2024 that I can't. There's a famous saying that says, "Don't do the same 75 years, year after year after year, and expect that to be a life." So whatever you don't change, you choose. So if I want different things in 2025 than I had in 2024, then I have to do different things in 2025 than I did in 2024. I make that analogy all the time about the scale in my bathroom. It don't move very often. It normally registers the same weight. I keep talking about all the time losing weight, and year after year, the scale continues to say the same thing because I don't change my actions. And until I change my actions, the scale's not going to change. And I'm not going to buy a new scale because the scale's wrong, the scale's right. What's not right is my actions. Like, kind of go off on this deal a little bit, but I go to a gym. And there's some guys that work out in the gym. They use the same equipment that I do in the gym. They work there at the gym the same amount of time I'm at the gym. They do the same reps that I do at the gym. But their bodies are completely different and in way better shape than what mine is. You want to know why? It's because when they leave the gym, they take the gym with them. When I leave the gym, I go to Brahms. So my body doesn't look like their body because they take those principles that they use in the gym and they take them with them. That's what I want to encourage you, is to take some of these things I'm talking about and carry them through 2025. Take these things with you into the rest of your. Some of you are like, I'm about to turn this podcast off. Don't. Let me tell you where the validity comes in this deal. In the about around 1930, there's a famous author, Think and Grow Rich. He wrote a book, one of the most popular books of all time. He wrote this book, Think and Grow Rich. And what he does is he goes in and he interviews 500 of the most successful people of the time. We're talking about Thomas Edison. We're talking about Gillette. We're talking about presidents. We're talking about, he interviewed 500 of the most successful people he could find in the world at that time. And there were two things that every one of them had. And that was they set goals and they knew exactly where they were going. And he wrote in his book, he said, no one will succeed unless they know exactly what they want. So the part of knowing what you want, and I'm going to get a little, tree huggy on you here, but not only knowing what you want, having that in your head, that's great. But in your head does not bring it into this world. So writing it down on a sheet of paper gives you a 20% better chance of hitting those goals than if you just leave those goals in your head. And like I said, this is not something I've been great at, but I'm going to do it this year. So he said setting goals and know exactly where you want to go. The two things that he said, he also interviewed, there was probably 30 different things that Napoleon Hill wrote that made people successful. Those are the two most common. There was also, he interviewed people that were not so successful to find out why they weren't so successful. You know what? And this is so simple to go from this unsuccessful realm to this successful realm. You know what the two things that unsuccessful people, two characteristics. There again, he wrote about 30 different things of things that made people unsuccessful. But the two most common things were they procrastinated and they quit. So I'm telling you straight up, if you want to be more successful in 2025, stop procrastinating. Whatever's on your to-do list today, don't move it to tomorrow. And whatever you do, don't quit. You know, that there's only been one thing in my life that I quit at that I'm not really comfortable with talking about at this podcast, but that's why pretty much I'm undefeated, because I ain't quitting. When I say quitting is I'm at least trying to make progress, and as long as you at least try to give progress and don't give up to a fixed mindset, which a fixed mindset is extremely detrimental, and I'll talk about that a little more here in a second. But this growth mindset, not only is this growth mindset so important, but a growth mindset is so important because think of it like this. A growth mindset is momentum moving forward. A growth mindset is moving forward mentally, physically, and why this is so important is I don't give a dang who you are. You're going to face obstacles, and you're going to run into hardships, and you're going to run into difficult times. But if you're in a growth mindset, you have this momentum going, and when you hit that obstacle, you just destroy it. But if you have a fixed mindset, then these obstacles are coming at you, and they're beating the crap out of you. And so a fixed mindset actually makes you more stressful than a growth mindset does. And I get this, there's this myth, and I've been managing people a long time, trying to help people a long time, and I always run into those people. I don't know, whatever the percentage of it is. You know what, Brad? That's great. I'm glad this works for you, but let me tell you something, bro. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I just want to keep making the money I'm making now, and I'm going to be cool. I'm like, no, you're not going to be cool. Because here's why. Okay, let's just take income, for example. I just want to stay right where I'm at for the next 5 years. Great. You make the money that you're making for the next 5 years, but there's this thing called inflation. The whole world's moving around you. So there's no such thing as staying in the same place. It is physically, spiritually, psychologically, impossible to stay in the same place. Because by staying in the same place, in your mind, actually you're falling behind. If you've ever been to the ocean and you stood in the ocean long enough, I've done this numerous times. Go out and stand in the ocean where the waves break and just stand in one place. What ends up happening is the sand erodes underneath you and you begin to sink slightly. So there's no such thing as a fixed mindset and staying in the same place. Carol Dweck had a famous saying. She said, "Becoming is better than being." Becoming is better than being, because there's momentum in that. There's encouragement in that. There's progress in that. And I do have some notes here. Don't want anything I'm trying to, there's a lot of information I want to share with you guys. So another thing about this whole thing about goals, I'm still trying to stay on this goals deal a little bit. What Napoleon Hill wrote is 75% of all successful people write down goals. They have goals. 70%. 30 don't, but I'd rather go with the 70% chance. And those that wrote down their goals and had goals were 20% more likely to succeed. Those are pretty dang good numbers. They'd be like, okay, well, what do successful people do? Well, 70% of the successful people write goals. And then there are 20% more. There's no downside to setting goals. And there's no downside to setting a goal and writing it down. There's none. There's nothing negative that can happen to you. What they found too is that let me share something with you. And like I said, I've managed people for a long time. I've set goals for myself occasionally. Set goals for a lot of people. There's 3 criteria when you're setting goals that you want to do. One, they need to be a little difficult. Don't set some goal that's doing the same crap that you're doing this year. Set a goal that's a little bit difficult, but the goal needs to be fair to you, and it needs to be achievable, And part of the way you do that, what's fair to me, Brad, and what's achievable? Well, what you need to do is first assess where you're currently at. You don't want to sit there and go, well, in 2025, by the end of 2025, I'm going to be a billionaire. Well, what are you worth now? $50,000. And not a very good chance of that. So one, set difficult goals, but set fair goals and make sure they're obtainable. So that then that way that you don't lose momentum and lose excitement. It doesn't come into a negative situation for you throughout the year as you're doing it. And another thing, whenever it is, whatever time it is, review those goals on a regular basis. Do it first day of every month. Pull your goal sheet out, read back over them, meditate on them, pray on them, figure out. One other thing on goals. Every time you set a goal, out to the right of it needs to be a couple of action items. This is so important because your life changes based off of your actions. Like I was talking about the gym deal. So your mind has an effect on the outcome, but what actually ultimately the mind drives the actions. And so what your do is once you set the goal, get a couple action items, a couple of things that you're going to adjust differently this year than you did last year to help you achieve the goals. If you set the goals and you're not going to do anything different than you did last year, you're not going to hit the goals. I'm just going to be real with you. So set the goals and set action items. Then whatever those action items are, there has to be an implementation. How do those things start becoming implemented into your life? Implement them in your life. Set the goals, set up action items, and implement those into your life and what time of day you're going to do them, when you're going to do them, how you're going to do them. The other part about this is no matter how difficult the times are, and no matter where you're at, that the growth mindset leads into you have a more of invincibility. Don't avoid the difficult times because the difficult times is where the growth comes. Me and Cash were just talking about, she worked out yesterday. I did some exercises and we're both a little bit sore. But what the soreness means is, do we enjoy it? No, we're not enjoying it. But that means that we're also, with the soreness becomes growth. So there's going to be a little bit of uncomfortable. There's going to be a little bit of soreness. There's going to be a little bit of difficulty. But if you're always in a situation where there's no difficulty and not a little bit of pain, you ain't growing. Some people always ask me this too. They say, ask me specific questions regarding what actions they are taking and what actions aren't they taking. So when they ask me a question and they say, Brad, should I continue to do this relating to these goals, right? I always ask them, let me ask you a question. Is that action that you're talking about bearing you fruit? If it's not bearing fruit, then why would you do it? If a certain situation or a certain relationship that you're in and it is bearing fruit, then I would stay there and I would stay in that situation. If you continue to do something, it bears no fruit. If you continue to be in a relationship, it bears no fruit. Guess what? Don't keep doing it. So those are the questions you want to ask yourself. Another one, somebody asks me all the time when they say, go through a certain scenario and ask me, should they do this? You know what the first thing I ask them? Okay, let me ask you this again. When you came up with this idea the first time, or when somebody approached you with this idea the first time, was there a little bit of doubt in your head? When they ask you, hey, let's go into business, or hey, I want to offer you this job, or whatever the situation is. If that little voice in your head said, I wonder if I should do that. The answer is always no. Take it from somebody that has had that intuition more than one time in their lives, and the little voice said, wonder if you should be doing it. I did it anyway, and it ended up costing me. Another thing in regards to making decisions for 2025, one of the few things my dad told me that it was actually very true. When somebody asks you a certain question, or when you're sitting trying to figure out what your action items are for 2025, the first answer that comes in your head is the right answer. Write it down. And what ends up happening is if you waver on this deal and you go with another answer, it normally ends up costing you money or time, and you have to come back to the original answer that you had the first time. Let me wrap this up a little bit in summary. In summary, embracing a growth mindset equips you with the tools you need to be a richer, more successful life. It fosters resilience, enhances communication, encourages continuous learning, and with all the essential persons and growth and professional achievements. And tell you one last thing. I'm always preaching this deal about relationships and how relationships. I just was on a phone call earlier today with a guy that's it's an AI company, and they're involved with another company, and they enhance this other company through this AI company. The reason this guy reached out to me is he said, "You have something that AI will never be able to do. You have the ability to go out and foster and create relationships. And no matter what happens throughout this year, relationships are the currency of the future. And if you take all these physical things that I'm talking about here, by setting goals, getting an action plan, doing all this, and then you add in that you're going to spend more time this year connecting with people, fostering relationships, strengthening relationships, all of these things come to happening." So, hey, thank you guys so much. Have a great day. Be real.